Hello everyone and welcome to the programme. A week can be a long time in football, and since last Tuesday's instalment of Premier League Today, not one but two managers have lost their jobs. The departed Ronald Koeman at Everton sacked yesterday after 16 months in charge, with the top is stuck in the bottom three. The rumour mill is in full swing, of course, with half a dozen names strongly linked to replacing the Dutchman at Goodison Park. Leicester's leading role is also up for grabs 7 days after Craig Shakespeare's departure. Could Slavin Bilic be the next one to go? His future has reportedly been discussed by the club's owners this week. Jurgen Klopp's Anfield tenure has passed the 2-year mark, but a Wembley humbling has once again raised questions for him. And the first cracks at Manchester United have emerged, with Jose Mourinho hitting out at his players after a first defeat of the season. Well, joining me in the studio today to go through all the major managerial upheaval and all the other main talking points, Sami Mokbel from the Daily Mail, and from ESPN, senior football writer Mark Ogden. Mark, Sami, great to see you. Well, first of all, of course, football scribes, they've all been busy with one thing in the last 24 hours, the departure of Ronald Koeman, third managerial casualty of the season. Some of these kind of departures take us by surprise, but there was almost an air of inevitability about this, wasn't there?
I totally agree. I think, you know, we saw this one coming, and I just think the result against Arsenal, the 5-2 loss on Sunday, just was the final straw for Farhad Moshiri. I think, you know, they spent a lot of money in the summer, a lot of investment in the playing squad, and I think the owner there was probably looking at the results and looking at the performances and thinking, well, you know, I've invested quite a lot this summer. Where's the results? And obviously, Koeman's paid the price.
And the strange thing is, Mark, the news was in stark contrast to his demeanour straight after the game, and of course what we saw in the papers afterwards.
Yeah, I think that's kind of symptomatic of Ronald Koeman, actually. He's a guy that has been at the top of his game as a player, and some would say he's got an arrogant streak, which arrogance, self-confidence, whichever way you cut it. That's Koeman's demeanour. That's how he is. He's not a guy that will suggest he's feeling down or anything. So he probably left the game at the weekend thinking, yeah, bad result, but, you know, I'll turn this around. And apparently even yesterday, before he took training, that he felt that he was fine. So whether that is his, like I say, his arrogance not really make him see the pitch, it might explain why Everton have been so poor recently, that he's just not been able to spot the real problems. He's just been too, you know, too focused on his own ideas rather than looking beyond that. I think Koeman's arrogance has probably led to his downfall at the end of the day.
Well, we'll pursue that line throughout the programme, but first, Ronald Koeman has had his say. He's released a statement on his departure from Goodison Park. This is what he said in the last couple of hours. He'd like to place on record my thanks to the players and staff for all of their work and commitment during my 16 months as Everton manager. I'd like to thank Bill Kenwright, Farhad Moshiri and the Everton board for the opportunity to have managed a great club, and to the fans as well for their passionate support for the club. Naturally, I am disappointed at this moment, but I wish the team good luck in the future. I mean, this season, the record, I mean, it's been quite staggering considering the money that's been spent over the summer. 2 wins out of 13 in all competitions, because, you know, you read a lot of the papers, particularly in the last 24 hours, the indication that you get is that Ronald Koeman was hanging his hat on a variety of number 10s. Sigurdsson is clearly somebody he wanted to go for, hence why they paid up to £45 million for him. But was the Rooney arrival more down to Bill Kenwright, and that it was more of a sentimental buy?
Perhaps it was certainly it was a romantic signing, wasn't it? It was the prodigal son returning home, and it was certainly it gave the club a feel-good factor going into the season. But I think Mark's right. Those of us that have watched Rooney over the past 3 or 4 seasons, maybe even longer, he's not the same animal anymore. He's played centre midfield for Man United. He's played centre midfield for England. He likes to drop back. He's not that goal-scoring threat that we all remember when he broke through into the Everton team and as a teenager all those years ago. And if Ronald Koeman did sign Wayne Rooney as a central striker, then it is it's proved a massive mistake, and it's probably perhaps a mistake that's cost him his job.
I mean, at middle of last season, Koeman was talking up the prospect of signing Rooney at the time, and even Mourinho responded to it by suggesting that he shouldn't be talking about the team's players. So, if it wasn't his signing, he certainly played a long game in terms of talking it up. You know, he was out there probably December last year talking up Rooney as a potential signing, and I don't think a man of Ronald Koeman's standing in the game would allow a club to make a signing above his head, especially like Wayne Rooney and all the kind of the baggage that brings in terms of his reputation, his standing at the Everton past. I think Koeman was fully on board with the Rooney signing. I think he may have kind of driven it as well, because right from the outset he was talking him up, and he's just not a centre forward anymore. He just isn't.
Well, interestingly, Wayne Rooney turns 32 today, I think it is, and will he become almost collateral damage for the new man to come in?
Well, it depends who the manager is, doesn't it? But he's either a big problem for the new manager, or he's a guy that...
He could find himself in a situation he was at Manchester United in the last 2 seasons.
Yeah, the new manager, whoever it is, has to be smart with Rooney, because, you know, Rooney could be an expensive problem that is on big wages, doesn't play very often, but he also has to get him on side to the extent that he's a senior player in the dressing room. He's still quite influential, and the fans are still on Rooney's side, because he's come back and he's done quite well for them. So it's a political issue, Rooney, how you handle that. And if a manager comes in and indulges him, like Van Gaal did at United, does he get performances? Because Van Gaal did and then didn't. Mourinho came in, treated him like anybody else, and the performances didn't happen there either. So he's a big problem, Rooney, because he's 32, he's earning big money, and the new guy's got to say, you're either my guy or you're not.
Before we get on to the new guy and who we think it might be, what about the job that person will have to do in January? Will there be a big overhaul of the squad? Because, as we all know, it's pretty imbalanced at this time, and the money that's spent on it so far could clearly have been spent more wisely.
Absolutely. I don't think January is the time ever to have a massive overhaul of any squad in the Premier League, because the prices are so inflated in January. No team wants to let their best players go in the middle of the season. So, but what we do know at Everton is that they, and we're touching on it again, is that they do lack a striker. So I think if they can go into the January window, bag themselves a reliable striker, someone they know that can maybe get them sort of 10 goals between January and the end of the season, then they will go and do that. But I think the majority of what the next manager will do in a transfer market will happen next summer rather than in January.
But this is what I mean, you know, you'd be infuriated as an Everton fan, wouldn't you? The first time your club in the top flight has really gone out for it. In the transfer market, spent unprecedented amounts in your history, twice as much in the last summer as your local rivals Liverpool, more than even Manchester United, and to find yourself without a manager 9 games into the season. Yeah,
but you're right, the money they have spent, we have to kind of put it into context that a lot of that, they've probably spent about a net £50 million, which, if you look at that in the grand scale of the Premier League, is kind of mid-table, because they've lost such a big player in Lukaku. So, have they spent a lot of money? Yes, they have, but the reality is that it's not as big a figure as it is when you take Lukaku out of it. But they're underperforming, you know. You sign players and none of them have really kind of made a difference. You know, Michael Keane went there, England centre-half, Man United were interested, he's gone to Everton and he's had a couple of good games and he's now looked like he's shell-shocked. He can't... His confidence is gone. You know, is that the manager's fault or is it Keane's fault for not being up to it? I just think the signs he's made just aren't good enough across the board.
He's also alienated 1 or 2, according to the Everton fans. One of them would be Ross Barkley. Of course, injury has put paid to him seeing any action, but he's been dealt with almost with an iron fist by Ronald Koeman. Is there a way back for him back into the fold, do you think?
I don't see why not now. You know,
because there seems to be this impression that a done deal to Tottenham is all but in the offing in January.
I think Tottenham I know Tottenham are certainly interested, and you know, that will be an option for Ross Barkley when the transfer window reopens. But a new manager may come in there and have a look at Ross Barkley and say, well, I want to incorporate this guy into my plans. You know, he's a talented player. We all know that. And it would be remiss of any manager to go in there and discount a fit and healthy and motivated Ross Barkley. So who knows, you know, but Barkley could have a massive part to play under the new regime.
Well, I mean, Barkley is a much younger version of a number 10 than Rooney and Sigurdsson. So surely he's more Everton's future. He's a local kid, he's an Everton fan. If the new guy can come in and get the best out of Barkley, they've got a much better player there, I think, than Rooney at 32 and Sigurdsson. The questions about Barkley are always the same. Can he defend? Can he focus enough? Can he concentrate enough? But still, if you get the right manager to bring out the best, they could build the team around Ross Barkley. And all of a sudden, it transformed everything.
And also because of the fact that Ross Barkley's an Everton local, the fact that he was alienated in the way that he was by Ronald Koeman, did that also not get the fans on the Dutchman's side too?
He might have played.
Because there seems to be all these factors, you see, the fact that you've already mentioned that he was quite aloof in the way that he was, didn't quite take on Everton's history or talk about us as Everton, the team. He was always quite detached from the football club.
I think, listen, there was this stigma that and this stereotype that he saw the club as a stepping stone to essentially the job that he always wants. He always wants his Barcelona, and that's what he's made no secret about that. But he's made mistakes, and the Barkley situation for me, it's probably one of his biggest ones, because there's such a talented player there, and for him to bring the shutters down on his career there, to me doesn't make any sort of football sense. I'm sure politically, in terms of what he was asking for a contract, maybe there was an issue there. But he's a big fan's favourite up at Goodison, and if he could have brought the best out of Barkley, then obviously even better, because the fans can attach themselves to someone like Ross Barkley, who's brought up in the area, come through the academy. But I don't think the fact that he wasn't playing was going to be too much of an issue. Listen, if he'd started the season with 7 wins out of 10, then I don't think many fans would be thinking about Ross Barkley right now.
No, but I think initially Koeman's approach to Barkley was welcoming a lot of the fans, because they felt that Barkley hadn't kicked on under Martinez, and the idea was that Koeman, this kind of tough love was making him a better player, but it became too tough, and I think Barkley reacted to it, and he just didn't take it on board. I think Barkley shut down in the end. It was just wasn't the way to deal with him. So, but I mean, one thing that comes to mind, you talk about Lukaku going, Barkley not being fit. They've also lost Seamus Coleman as well, as a big part of Everton's team. Loss, They haven't replaced him properly. So, Koeman has had misfortune in terms of injuries to key players, but obviously one of the key players he'd frozen anyway in Barkley. So it feels to me like the right decision at the right time for Everton. They just have to make the right appointment now and get the guy that will take them where they need to go. Well,
at Everton, as with most things, things continue to go on, and Everton take on Chelsea away in the next game. That's in the League Cup in the last 16. That's on Wednesday evening, incidentally. And David Unsworth is the under-23s coach at Goodison Park. He'll be taking temporary charge, and he's been giving a press conference and reflecting on Ronald Koeman's time.
Well, everybody will have their opinions, and quite rightly so, because football is an opinions game. The bottom line for any manager when they lose the job is that did you win enough games? And unfortunately, we're in a position where you're going to say no, we didn't, well, no, we haven't. But at any football club, if you don't win enough games, your position will always be the subject of much debate. I spent the afternoon with the chairman yesterday. We spoke everything Everton. From how many games to individual players to plans for the short term, long term. We spoke about everything. So I had a great chat with the chairman, but it's not a difficult decision at all to stand as Everton manager. If you're an Evertonian, that makes you very proud.
So I take it then you still want this job full time, and with regard to that, then what has the chairman said to you?
Well, I'll repeat myself from last time I sat here 18 months ago. Who wouldn't want this job? It is a wonderful football club with amazing fans, and it is a top job for absolutely any manager, myself included. The chairman has given me an opportunity, Farhad has given me an opportunity, the board have given me an opportunity to hopefully get a run of games where performance levels go up and we produce some wins as well. From that, performances and results will dictate any future for me as Everton manager.
Well, if there's anybody who bleeds Everton blue, it's got to be David Unsworth. He says he wants the job. Who wouldn't want the job, he says. But can you see him realistically being in contention?
No. Unless he wins the next 4 or 5 games and gets it at the end of the season. A bit like Craig Shakespeare at Leicester. If he starts well, he'll get the job. But you just don't sense there's any kind of mood within the hierarchy at Everton to give it to David Unsworth. They've got a major shareholder in Farhad Moshiri who wants Everton to be a big club, big hitter club, so we want a big name. That's just the nature of the game now. That's how owners work, and I don't think David Unsworth will tick that box. Like I say, he might have an instant uplift, he might get some results, but it's all about fashionable faces, and unfortunately for David Unsworth, as well connected to Everton as he is, he's not a fashionable face to you know, Farhad Moshiri, who will want a Carlo Ancelotti or a Thomas Tuchel or even a Diego Simeone if he's been really ambitious. I don't think David Unsworth will be what he's looking for.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. But Everton is still a massive club, and it's a club that has a profile that stretches across Europe. And Farhad Moshiri will know that, and you know he will know the potential that club has, and he will want a manager to fit that profile. And listen, if David Unsworth does go and win 4 games on the bounce, and yes, he may be pushed into a decision, but I think it's probably a decision he doesn't want to make. I think he wants to perhaps look further afield. There's been a lot of names mentioned already.
Yeah.
He's only been sacked. He's only been out of a job for 24 hours, and we've had the likes of Ancelotti mentioned, as you say, Tuchel has been mentioned, and I think he would probably rather go down that route rather than a David Unsworth.
Before we look at the... Oh, go on. Do you want to say something?
Moshiri will know as well that whoever he appoints will be significant when it comes to signing players next year, because players, agents will say, well, where's your ambition? Oh, it's David Unsworth. Well, we've not heard of him. With due respect to David Unsworth, well, me and Sammy have and you have, but players across the continent won't. They'll want to see an Ancelotti or a manager that's got real calibre, because then it'll say Everton mean business and the owner means business. So that's why he will want a high-profile name, so he can attract better players.
Interesting to see, you know, how long Bill Kenwright and Farhad Moshiri actually give David Unsworth in that position, because they've got an international break after the next 4 fixtures. Chelsea, Leicester, Lyon, Watford. They're the next 4. Is it realistic, you think, that Unsworth might look at, you know, oversee those 4 games before they then take stock and then put the new man in charge come the international break?
I don't think there's an immediate rush to get someone in place. I think they will survey the landscape first and see who's available, who's up for the job. Maybe look at other clubs and see which managers there that may tickle their fancy. Obviously, taking managers mid-season is a complicated process with competition and whatnot, but they will look at the options and look at the squad that they've got, and then they will assess who they think is the best man for the job. So I don't think there's going to be an immediate rush to get someone in place before the international break, certainly.
So let's have a look at the runners and riders.
I'm just going to say those next 6 fixtures are massive, because they're all kind of relegation-threatened clubs, and Everton are now just about kind of hovering on the edge of a relegation battle. I think if they don't manage those games properly in the next 6 games, the new guy will be basically charged to keep them up, because that is what they're faced with now.
Those are the favourites.
Yeah.
To replace Ronald Koeman, Sean Dyche, top of the list. And in fact, the 2 favourites are both in a job in the Premier League at the minute. Marco Silva at Watford, who continues to do an astounding job. I mean, just to give you an impression of, you know, what the UK press have made of it all, and these guys will know as well. For example, today's 4 newspapers have all gone for 4 different names. I think it's fair to say nobody really has an inkling at this point in time.
That's probably right, and I don't think the Everton owners do, because I think most clubs, if they've got a plan, will get rid of the manager once they've got somebody lined up, and Everton haven't done that yet. Putting Unsworth in suggests that they're still fishing around. I mean, look at that list of runners and riders. I think, for me, a lot of those candidates have got pros and cons against them. I think the best appointment there would be Sam Allardyce, because he'd go there, he'd keep them up, and he said he don't want to come back into management for a kind of a firefighting job that he's had before. But Everton can be more than that. Everton could be the club that takes Sam Allardyce into the top 4 if you ever... You know, it's got money, it's got ambition. But the rest of the candidates, I think, you know, will Ancelotti go to Everton? Probably not. Look at his CV, PSG, Real Madrid, Bayern Munich, AC Milan. Everton doesn't fit that bill. And it's the same with some of the others. And Sean Dyche, does he appeal to Farhad Moshiri? Again, probably not.
Sammy?
On the list of names there, I would look back to when Everton have had a period of sustained success and have a look at what they were doing there. And the name that springs to mind there is obviously David Moyes. And I'm not
saying he should be coming back.
I'm not saying he should become the new manager. What I'm saying is that they should maybe go for someone in that mould. And the one that springs out to me is Sean Dyche. He's done a fantastic job on minimal money, minimal resources at Burnley. He's established them at Premier League level, and they've got a fantastic...
Welcome back to Tuesday's edition of Premier League Today with football writers Sammy Mockbell and Mark Ogden. We've already digested the news that Ronald Koeman is out of a job at Everton. Well, what about Leicester City? Or just 2 years after winning the Premier League title, against all the odds, the Foxes are already looking for their third manager of the football club, which is an incredible position to be in. This time last week, the news only just broke of Craig Shakespeare being given the sack by the Foxes. Was he given enough time, as far as you were concerned, Sammy, just 8 games in?
Probably not. But I think he's just another victim of that magical Premier League title win 2 seasons ago. I think, you know, you speak about managers. Is it good to be a overachieving manager or an underachieving manager? I think if you want to keep your job, it's probably best to be an underachieving manager, because the expectation levels at that club now are so high after that title win that, you know, anything other than, you know, regular victories, and certainly not sitting in the relegation zone, just isn't good enough. And obviously Shakespeare's paid the price.
It felt at the time, didn't it, when he first stepped into the breach, when Ranieri left, winning those first 5 games in charge in all competitions, the owners almost felt obliged to give him the position.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, the players have probably got something to answer for as well, because everyone heard that the players wanted Shakespeare in charge. Well, where have they been this season? You know, why have they not been performing this season? They can't suddenly turn it on and off like a tap, and that's what they've been doing. So, I mean, I wasn't surprised when he got the job, because, like you said, the start kind of made it inevitable. But I think the owners, I was surprised that they allowed themselves to give him a long-term contract. They could have waited till the summer and just been a bit more cold and calculated about it, and got a guy who has a proven record. This was coming. You know, caretaker managers rarely step up and be the main guy. And I think, especially when the players want them, it's almost like the players want an easy ride after the last guy. And this was always going to end in tears. The owners should have made a change in the summer and brought a guy in that's got a proven track record if they want to be back where they were, or close to where they were.
It took them a month, really, to mull over whether to give Shakespeare the job anyway. And I suppose you could read plenty into that.
Absolutely. I was surprised that they gave Craig Shakespeare the job on a permanent basis. Yes, he had that bounce last season, and he essentially kept the team in the Premier League. But when you're in the summer transfer market, and when you're trying to sign top players, when you're sitting down with their agents, as we discussed earlier, and you survey your options, and is a top player really going to sign for a club who has Craig Shakespeare? With all due respect to Craig, he did a fantastic job there, and he's a fantastic coach, but, you know, he doesn't necessarily have that attracting pull feature that other managers will have, and I think that is why Leicester now want to go down the route of trying to perhaps sign an established, high-profile manager, because they know the benefits of that in terms of the transfer market. And when you're trying to sign top players, that you're more likely, or you're going to have more of a chance to get those big deals over the line.
What has been interesting, and it almost ties the Everton and Leicester stories together, is that Leicester had a director of football, or a head of recruitment, even an assistant manager. He had many roles in Steve Walsh, and it was his recruitment of players that some might say helped Leicester to win the title 2 seasons ago. He's since gone to Everton. Their recruitment is now very much under the spotlight. But what about the recruitment at Leicester since Walsh had left, and looking at the players that they've brought in? I suppose you only look at Harry Maguire, of which they only spent a very modest £12 million fee on, has been the one overriding success.
Yeah, Harry Maguire's a fantastic player, and I think, obviously, a lot was expected of Iheanacho. Big reputation as an emerging striking talent from Man City. Scored a lot of goals at City, but I just think for whatever reason it hasn't worked for him. He started the season on the bench, didn't he? He wasn't fully fit, and he's come in, and I don't think he's quite managed to replicate the sort of form that he showed at City. And also the big thing for Iheanacho is that he doesn't have that sort of quality around him, feeding him passes and spotting his runs, and that, you know, essentially that will be Iheanacho's biggest problem, that he's not going to get the number of chances that he had at City, at Leicester. It's just a matter of fact. It's just the quality of player, you know, the quality of the squads are on 2 different stratospheres.
Yeah, he's not got David Silva and Kevin De Bruyne feeding him passes, and that makes a difference, and Leicester don't dominate.
Well, there's not many players with those kind of...
But even then, he didn't score that many goals for City with those.
No.
So he's got a lot of pace in that show, and he's got a lot of potential, but £25 million is a lot of money for him. And, you know, Maguire's done OK, Ibora's been hit and miss, so... that wasn't a lot of spending for Leicester this summer to go back to where they wanted to be. So, yeah, the wheels have fallen off a little bit in terms of recruitment. But even then, you know, Steve Walsh was given lots of credit, but you could argue that he just got really lucky with Kante and Vardy. I mean, they were
and
the
Mahrez
two.
too.
Mahrez, yeah. Fair play. They've had 3 that come together, but, you know, was it a sustained period of recruitment, or was it just something coming together at the right time?
I look at that spend from the summer, and it strikes me that perhaps even the owners knew in the summer that Shakespeare wasn't going to be there long term. But it's not okay. Ian Atcho was £25 million, but other than that, they were fairly modest signings. So it just strikes me, maybe I'm wrong, but it just strikes me that they knew they would have an issue with Shakespeare in the summer, so they decided not to give him the sort of money that I'm sure that is available to Leicester.
But as you're saying about players wanting to play for a manager, they've signed players from Man City's reserves and Hull, who were relegated, and, you know, OK, Bora came from Seville, but they've not actually brought players in that are thinking that are wow signings that, yeah, I want to play for Leicester. Or the managers do make a difference, you know. Pep Guardiola, Jose Mourinho win races for players because of who they are. Now, Leicester aren't going to get one of those managers just yet, but Craig Shakespeare is not going to win the race for any player because he's just a guy that was a coach.
Interestingly, one name that should have been on that list, but if it wasn't for 14 seconds, Adrian Silva would have been one of the acquisitions, and it's emerged now in the last literally half an hour. Leicester City won't be appealing FIFA's rejection of his registration. They're saying that obviously it landed in the inbox when it should have done. Everything else was clearly, you know, just kind of administration-based. But they're not taking it to the Court of Arbitration for Sport now. So for them, that's stuck where it is. But you've got to have some sympathy for Craig Shakespeare on that front. He's been let down on that, you know, in terms of not bringing him on board.
Absolutely. It's always disappointing for a manager when you think you've got a player and for whatever reason it falls through. But would Adrian Silva, I don't know an awful lot about Adrian Silva as a player, but would he have made a massive difference to the way Leicester? I suppose it's an audition for both of them to prove their credentials. Appleton, I think he's come out and said he would certainly wants to stay at the club, even
well,
if
he just signed up a 3-year deal, didn't he? To be an assistant.
Even as an assistant. So it's a opportunity for him to stake his claim for the job. So it would be. There'll be a lot of there'll be a lot of hopeful managers, 2 hopeful managers at the game at the weekend.
Yeah. Wasn't this the game that sealed the title a couple of years ago?
It was, yeah. Well, it was already done and dusted. It was just to see off the season.
Yeah, but still, it was, you know, how things have changed, and I think.
Yeah, it's a good point, actually.
It's just amazing that, you know, both clubs are in the situation now. But I just think Leicester, they've got a great stadium.
Bocelli was singing that day as well.
Yeah, it's time to say goodbye, I think. More than once, really.
To the managers, too.
Yeah, that's the theme tune for the manager's office, I think. But Leicester are a good club. They're a one-club city. They've got a nice new stadium, big fan base, but the expectations probably outgrown the club at the moment.
Yeah. Well, look, let's talk about a football club where there is a man at the helm, unlike Leicester and Everton, but he has certainly come under so much pressure, particularly in the last 12 months. Slaven Bilic is hanging on to his position at Westham United. They were thumped. I mean, it was an incredible result at the London Stadium on Friday, losing to New Boys Brighton by 3-0. But yet again, here we are. Yeah, this could almost be a rerun of a programme we've run for the last almost 25 editions. He's 1 or 2 games away from being given the sack.
Again, it's the way of the world. I think they've started the season difficult. They had those 3 away games at the start of the season, and I think from day one, they lost those and they were playing catch up. And it's ever since then, I think Bilic has been treading water. The problem that Bilic has got is that unless there's some sort of dramatic turnaround between now and the end of the season, he will not be West Ham manager next season, but his contract runs out in the summer. So instantly, players, not all players, but certain players will use that to not down tools, but perhaps they'll say, look, well, this guy.
Well, you're not here next year.
Yeah, this guy's not going to be here next season. Why should I bust a gut for you? And that causes a massive problem for Bilic, because then straight away he's got, his authority is undermined, and the owners aren't stupid at West Ham. They will know that, and I can't see Bilic ending the season as West Ham manager. I think he'll go. I think if they lose to Palace on Saturday, I think that will be the end of Slavin.
Do you agree, Mark?
I agree with Sammy. I think I'm surprised that he survived the West Ham, the Brighton game, because that's. To lose 3-0 at home to Brighton, a team that's just been promoted, is a really, really painful, damaging defeat. And I think Bilic's problem is that he overachieved in his first season at Upton Park, so he had to repeat that not only repeated, but also it's the stadium that they've moved to, which has been a disaster for the club because it's anything that Upton Park wasn't. It's the wrong part of town. It's too big. The pitch is too far away from the stands. It's just an awful football stadium. And Upton Park was such a big advantage for West Ham, and he really kind of tapped into it in that final season.
Mind you, the Pyatt saga didn't help as well last season too.
Well, exactly, but Pyatt was so good in that first season as well, and he had all these problems to deal with, as well as the Pyatt situation, and so, against some really bad recruitment at West Ham that in the summer after they moved to the stadium. So he's been in a kind of perfect storm, but you look at his demeanour, he looks like he's in agony every time he's on the touchline. He probably knows that, you know, he's fighting a losing battle, and I think you have to admire his kind of resolve. He's always out there, he's always fronting up, but it just looks like a club that is drifting and desperately needs change. But maybe that includes the owners as well, that they have to look at it differently and think of the fans. I don't think the fans went to move to the new stadium. They've driven a lot of things through without the fans being on board. And it's an unusual club, West Ham. The fans are very much connected to the club in a way that a lot of clubs aren't. And I think you have to be marching in step with the West Ham fans for it to be successful. At the minute, nobody's marching in step. It's all over the place.
But haven't the owners, you know, David Gold, David Sullivan, I think they put themselves almost in a corner? Because on the game, you know, on Friday, they did come out and say, we expect our manager to honour his contract. Therefore, he's got the rest of this season to see out.
Absolutely. I think that David Sullivan has put himself in an awkward situation with those comments. But what is important to add about those remarks is that he did also say, unless there is an extreme circumstance. Now, whether the layman or whether the guy on the street would see losing to Palace as an extreme circumstance, maybe not, but I think David Sullivan, David Gold would certainly see it as an extreme circumstance. Palace are struggling this season. They've scored 2 goals the entire season. They've only got 3 points, and losing to them, as I say, would see Bilic fired.
So everything hinges on the Palace game, which, on the face of it, is massive in itself. So the League Cup game against Tottenham, who may be weaker, because Mauricio Pochettino has intimated he won't be playing Harry Kane, is almost incidental for Slaven Bilic.
Depends how it goes. I mean, if Spurs dish out a hammering, which they could do, you know, they put 4 past Liverpool at the weekend, and, you know, West Ham and Spurs have got a big rivalry as well, and to lose to Tottenham would be really painfully felt by the West Ham fans. So depends if they lose, how they lose, and if they win, you know, I'm not sure a win will actually help, but I think a bad defeat could see him off. I think he's trapped now. He's got Spurs away and Palace away. I just don't see a way out for him now, I really don't.
Yeah, well, in the build-up to the Spurs Cup meeting, Slaven Bilic has been talking to the press in the last half an hour and addressing questions about whether his players had a meeting after the Brighton defeat.
Yeah, they had a meeting. I know about that, of course. It was yesterday. First, I had a meeting with Mark. Before that, it was a long meeting, chat, or whatever you want to call it, and then after that they had a meeting which I find very positive, of course. They also know the situation, that is serious and all that, and we have to play better and to get points. I have a conversation with the chairman, and as always, he's been very supportive. He's been backing the team, backing me, but of course we were talking about situations, and I didn't need the chairman to tell me that situation. To be fair, he didn't tell me where we are, because he also knows that I know. So as I said, it was no different than any, apart from the thing that we both. It's not like a monologue, you know. We were talking about the situation and everything, and we agreed that we had to get points. Very, very, very soon.
One thing you've got to admire about Slaven Bilic while he's been at West Ham is just the way he fronts up to all the questions. He's always so honest. But we were just talking then as we were listening to Slaven there. You think sometimes he's almost too honest for his own good. Yeah,
it's great for us as journalists, because he's so honest. He provides us with such great copy. The quotes are brilliant, but sometimes I think in modern day management you just have to be a bit cuter. part of most... a lot of managers will go into press conference situations emotional, particularly after games. Some things just happen. They, perhaps lost a game. And I think in those situations, it's more of what you don't say than what you do say that makes the impact. And I just don't think, as much as I admire Slavan and as much as I admire his honesty, I just don't think he's grasped that. He's too, perhaps, if it's possible to be, he's too honest with the press, and I think that sometimes that leaves him in a bit of a difficult situation.
There's talk of no succession planning at Leicester City as they go looking for a replacement for Craig Shakespeare. What about West Ham? I mean, are you hearing anything? I mean, I know you're based down in the capital. Is there anything that you've heard that you could tell us?
Yes, no, there's they started ringing around. From my understanding, they started ringing around, seeing who may be available, who would be up for it. I think, like Everton and Leicester, I think they've got their eyes on a higher profile manager. I think they'd certainly want to have a chat with Carlo Ancelotti, but whether Carlo would want that job, I'm not so sure, given the calibre of club that he's managed in the past. But they've certainly started looking, which again is just, we've taken into Slavan's situation at the moment. It just spells disaster for Slavan, the fact that they're already looking for a new manager. He's still in the position, he's still in his position as manager there. It just looks every bit that he's, sooner rather than later, that he's going to be out of a job.
Yeah, I mean, Ancelotti's the name that I've heard for West Ham as well. But I just think that smacks of a club that's just not in touch with its situation right now, because I don't think Carlo Ancelotti is the sort of manager that you'd hire to get you out of a relegation battle, which is what West Ham are in. He's a guy that, will kind of keep in the Champions League. Managers have different skill sets, and what West Ham need right now is a guy that knows the Premier League, knows the bottom six, how to get out of it, and, without sounding like the Sam Allardyce Appreciation Society, he was the guy that kept West Ham up against the odds when he was there. They got rid of him for Bilic. He's exactly what they need right now, but I don't think he'd go back there. But it's that sort of manager they need. Ancelotti, for me, would be going into an absolute nightmare situation, and I don't think he'd be the manager to get them out of it. They need to look where they are and think, right, we need a guy that will get us out of this mess. Even like David Moyes, who, for all his kind of critics, would do a better job at West Ham than Ancelotti, because he knows the division, knows the relegation scrap, and I think they need that kind of expertise right now.
The fans need to be realistic at West Ham as well, because the Hammers Academy, they've got this tradition of playing, great, expansive football. Where's it got them? Where's it got them playing that way? The fans hounded out Sam Allardyce when I put the guy out of his misery. He looks like he's suffering. Part ways, do it amicably, settle whatever the settlement compensation is. Sort all that out. Get your new guy in, and look forward. But at the moment, the club's going nowhere. And as we touched on earlier, I don't think that the squad know he's not going to be there next season. So straight away you're fighting a losing battle if you're Slavan Bilic.
And you think this indecision could cost West Ham ultimately if they're not careful? Yeah.
Well, if they were relegated, it would be an absolute disaster given the infrastructure that's in place. They are built to be a Premier League club, and if they were to go down, it would be a catastrophe.
Well, we spoke about Everton earlier in the programme, but things aren't much better in the red half of Merseyside. Jurgen Klopp's defensive issues seem to be getting worse. Plus, over in Manchester, United suffer their first hiccup of the campaign, and we'll be discussing those stories in a couple of minutes. Welcome back to Premier League Today. Football writers Sammy Mockbell and Mark Ogden are with me in the studio, looking back at the week that was in the Premier League, and it was a case of Groundhog Day for Liverpool and their defensive frailties. They went to Wembley, the temporary home, of course, for Tottenham, came away with nothing apart from quite a hiding. 4-1 it finished at the end, leaving Liverpool in 9th position in the league. 1 win from 6 under Jurgen Klopp, something like 12 points behind the leaders, Manchester City. And I talk about being Groundhog Day because this is something that we could all see coming, Mark, and you were there to watch it firsthand.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I went there thinking maybe Liverpool could do something different because it was 5 years since they lost to Tottenham. It was quite an impressive run considering Spurs' growth in recent years, but within 5 minutes it was clear that it was going to be the same old story. Dejan Lovren was just... He had a terrible game taken off after half an hour, which who knows what that'll do to his confidence. But, I mean, I saw Liverpool the week before against Man United, and United was so scared of Liverpool they didn't attack them, and you're thinking, this defence and the goalkeeper is so unreliable. Moreno's been defending at left-back for 3 or 4 years, and he can't defend. So it was no surprise, and the only surprise is that Klopp's been there for 2 years now, and nothing's changed. And to me, it's the same Liverpool team as Brendan Rodgers had. Great going forward, but can't defend, and then nothing's changed. And at some point, maybe it's now, that Klopp has to be questioned as to what is he making a difference with, apart from... In the summer, he basically strengthened the strong part of his team and ignored the weakest part of his defence. They went after Van Dijk, didn't get him, but surely there's a plan B or a plan C, but that was it. No, middle of June, we've missed out on our top target, forget it, we'll go with what we've got. And they're paying the price now, and there's no way they're going to win the league, and I think they're going to struggle for top 4.
If you make the comparison to Manchester City and Pep Guardiola, who at the moment are running away with the league title, it seems. Pep Guardiola obviously looked at his team in the summer and thought, where do I need to strengthen? Fullbacks. He went and spent 100 million on if not more, on fullbacks. If you're Jurgen Klopp, in the summer, you must look at your team and say, where do I need to strengthen? It's in the middle of your back 4. And yes, OK, they went for Virgil van Dijk, but the deal didn't come off. You have to go for you have to go for down your list of options. You can't just ignore the fact that the centre of your defence and your left back isn't good enough. OK, they signed Robertson, but they've not been playing.
No.
They've not been playing. So, it's a problem that we can all see. We know what's wrong with Liverpool, yet for whatever reason, Jurgen Klopp's chosen not to do anything about it. He's let the malaise in his back 4 continue, and they're getting their just desserts at the moment. As you say, 1 win in 6 is not the form of a club who certainly won't challenge for the Premier League and are going to struggle to get back into the top 4.
And he's arguably wasted £30 million on Oxlade-Chamberlain, who's barely started. And
Can you make an argument as to why he spent 35 million on yet another attacking midfielder and not address the centre of defence?
No, I mean, the only argument we can make is that he's a young English player and for quotas and what have you, but, Liverpool are doing OK for homegrown quotas. Oxlade-Chamberlain, for me, was no better than what they had. Doesn't know where he wants to play, and... Yeah, no, I can't make any case for it because that money could have been spent much more wisely at the back. I think in total he's spent about less than £10 million on centre-half since he's been there. He could have spent that on 2 and, there'd be better defenders than they are now. So, no, I think Klopp has a lot to answer for, and I think you will find over the next few weeks that questions are being asked because it's 2 years now and Liverpool haven't really kicked on.
The tide is turning, isn't it, with fans as well? When you're driving home sometimes when you're listening to the whatever phoning it is, and... You're having more and more disgruntled Liverpool fans who are making his exact point in that, are we better off? How are we better off under Klopp than we were when Brendan Rodgers was in charge? And I think there's an argument to say that they aren't. I think they're probably on an even keel than they were when Brendan there. So I can't see where the improvements have been made under Jurgen Klopp. I really can't.
There's a stark contrast between where these two football clubs who met at Wembley are heading in this moment in time. Mark, you wrote about it online for ESPN. You're kind of getting into the crux of the matter as to, why aren't they following the Pochettino lead? If they only need to look at Tottenham to move forward. Liverpool's recent trophy haul is as unimpressive as Tottenham's, 1 major trophy in 11 years. Spurs have realised that they can only beat the rich and powerful by being smart in terms of player development and recruitment. But Tottenham are in the same situation as Liverpool when it comes to spending money on transfer fees and wages, yet they are now building a team under Maurizio Pochettino that could still halt City's surge to the title this season. It does beg the question, why haven't Liverpool under Jurgen Klopp progressed at the same rate as Tottenham under Maurizio Pochettino?
Well, I think Liverpool are still stuck in a situation where they see their biggest direct rivals as Man United, Chelsea and Liverpool. Traditionally, they are. Liverpool are a massive club that such a successful history, but the present day is that those three clubs have gone way past them in terms of finance and ability to attract players. Tottenham are where Liverpool are, really, in terms of a club, in terms of where they are, what they can afford. Spurs will go past them with this new stadium. But Liverpool need to realise that if they can't compete financially with these big clubs, they have to be smarter. They've got directors of football, they kind of got this American Moneyball method which the owners are quite keen to pursue. So, but they're still falling between the stools. So I think they need to look at it and just be much smarter with their recruitment and do what Tottenham have done. Give more kids a chance. Because what's happened to the Gerrards, the Carragers, the Michael Owens, the Robbie Fowlers that Liverpool used to produce? They haven't produced any. Raheem Sterling's probably the last one, but he started off at QPR, and he's gone anyway now. So they're not producing kids anymore, which Tottenham are doing fantastically, and they're also not recruiting well enough, like Spurs with Dele Alli. Liverpool had Dele Alli at Melwood at the training ground and didn't finish the deal. So, you know, it's obvious that Tottenham have got it right. They're not as big a club as Liverpool, but Liverpool, for whatever reason, still think they can compete with the richer clubs, and they can't. So they need to refocus, as we were saying about other clubs before, that realise that the reality of the here and now is that they can't compete with the big clubs in terms of the money, so they have to be more astute and be more like Tottenham.
Some might say they're not even standing still, and that Liverpool, and in particular their defence, is actually getting worse.
I think there's an argument. I think there's an argument to say that. I think that the argument would probably be right. I think, you know, some of the defending at Tottenham, and Tottenham are a good side. Some of the defending on Sunday was schoolboy stuff, and not to mention the goalkeeping as well. The goalkeeper's been an issue for Klopp ever since he arrived, and again, it's something that he hasn't addressed. He signed Karius, but we've seen Karius play, and he's certainly not up to it. But again, it seems that Klopp has a stubborn nature whereby, you know, he doesn't listen to the common consensus. We can see he's got a problem with a central defender. He hasn't signed one. We can see he's got a problem with his goalkeeper. He hasn't signed one, and I think he's paying the consequences for it now, because make no mistake about it, they are struggling now. Struggling big time.
I think the forwards are getting away with it as well, because they're not helping their defence, because they don't put a shift in terms of defending. And you know, when he was at Borussia Dortmund, Klopp had Lewandowski, who is one of the hardest working centre forwards you'll ever see. He's not got anything like that at Liverpool. So he's got Salah, Coutinho, Firmino, Mane when he's fit, who just don't track back and don't look like they're really trying hard enough to help the defenders. So the back four and the midfielders aren't good enough. The midfielders don't do a shift out. Emre Can may do Jordan Henderson, but they're not protecting the back four. So it's non-stop for the back four. So no wonder they're getting overrun, because they're not getting protection in front of them. But at the end of the day, they're not good enough to be Liverpool defenders, and that's the main problem.
And that's and as Mark says, that's all down to recruitment. All of sort of Europe's top clubs, they all go after the same players. They all know who has a chance of making it and who's not. And I think in a club like Liverpool's situation, they maybe have to go a season earlier for those players. Whereas maybe United or City have got the finances to go and buy a ready-made player. But maybe in Liverpool's case, they have to go a season earlier, because at the moment something just isn't right with that recruitment process.
There's a little Naby Keita, obviously, at Leipzig, he brought in for it, but again, he's more of an attack-minded midfielder than the defensive midfielder.
So it's another more of the same with what they've got.
So, you know.
Yeah. Now, look, you touched on Dejan Lovren at fault for two of the goals. Reports in the papers today in the UK press saying that he's now removed the Liverpool reference from his bio on his social media profile, which is quite telling. Clearly, he's been stung by being substituted barely just...
The only thing he can do is and I know it sounds a cliche, but is get his head down and just graft and just ride the storm. And, you know, I'm sure he'll have another opportunity. Well, he'll certainly play again between now and January at the very least, because they haven't got any other options.
It's interesting. Lovren, when he was at Southampton, was pursued by United and Liverpool. He was regarded as the best defender in the Premier League outside the big clubs. He was coached by Pochettino, and it just shows you that a great defensive coach like him can get the best out of him. Klopp, who doesn't really focus on the defence, can't. So there's a player in there, he's just got to get out of him.
And as we already touched upon, Simon Mignolet's role in a couple of goals was also very much under the microscope. Are we now going to return to Liverpool umming and ahhing as to who is going to be their regular Premier League goalkeeper? Are they going to bring back Loris Karius? in between the sticks as he's been their Champions League keeper so far?
I think Klopp's been pretty clear in saying that Mignolet is his #1 goalkeeper for the Premier League. So unless there's a drastic change in heart from Liverpool manager, I can't see Karius playing. But it just underlines the malaise that there is at that in terms of the recruitment structure there. We all know Mignolet is a great shot stopper, but he's probably not going to win you the sort of keeper that's going to win you sort of the 10, 15 points a season you need to be challenging for the Premier League. We can all see that. But for whatever reason, Jurgen Klopp just hasn't chosen to address it.
It's funny because they got Danny Ward, who's also at Liverpool, who was a big part of Huddersfield being promoted last year, penalty saved in the playoff final. Will he get a chance? Is he any worse than Karius and Mignolet? Probably not, but he probably won't play.
No. So not a good weekend for the red half of Merseyside. What about the red half of Manchester? 2-1 losers against the new boys, Huddersfield Town. It was their first win over Manchester United, something like since 1952. It was quite incredible. Nobody saw it coming as United suffered their first league defeat of the season. Jose Mourinho afterwards did not pull any punches. I mean, he certainly, said that his players were to blame for their lack of desire, the lack of spirit that was shown by the Terriers on the day. But shouldn't Mourinho be taking more responsibility himself?
Yeah, I think so. But it's classic Mourinho, isn't it? He threw his players under the bus, and it's not something new from Jose. He's done it season in, season out. He did it a couple of seasons ago at Chelsea when he was trying to get some sort of reaction out of his players when they were on that awful run towards the end of his reign. But he didn't, and then at the end, the Chelsea players just switched off and they rolled over and they weren't playing for him. And I just wonder how many more outbursts like that a squad like Man United and the players that they have, the profile of the player. I just wonder how many of those they are willing to take before they start to turn on Mourinho.
Yeah, I think he's got a bit more time at United because a lot of that squad has had a bad 3 or 4 years under Van Gaal and Moyes, so they can see that Mourinho's doing things right. And he said nobody saw it coming. I think people who watched United the last 2 or 3 weeks saw a decline in their performances. They were poor at Liverpool, they were poor at Benfica. I think a defeat has been coming. Probably didn't expect it.
Not to Huddersfield, no.
Yeah, that's the thing. But this thing about him criticising the players, I remember. I mean, this is going back maybe 10, 15 years. They lost the Manchester derby at Man City, and Ferguson went ballistic with his players, and he wouldn't rarely criticise in public, but he said, "I feel like opening the dressing room door and letting the fans in to have a go at him over that performance." And there are times when the big managers have to do it. And back then, none of the players came out moaning and complaining that the manager would let them down or throw them under a bus. I think sometimes it needs to happen, and United were terrible on Saturday. None of the players perform on it, and sometimes the manager has to get into them and say it as it is. And I think he was respectful to Huddersfield. He didn't moan about the defeat for once. He was kind of complimentary to the opposition. I think on this occasion he was right to single his players out because there has been a decline, and I think they've lost players. Like Pogba's been out, Carrick, Fellaini, Eric Bailly. They've lost Phil Jones now, so they are losing big players. But still, that performance at the weekend probably merited Mourinho having a go at them.
What about the argument the seeds of that defeat were planted the week before at Anfield when they went for this defensive approach against Liverpool? Were the players inadvertently told themselves against Huddersfield?
I'm not sure if I'd go as far as to say that, but they were playing Huddersfield, and with all due respect to Huddersfield, the United players would have turned up there and said, "Look, if we play 70%, 80% of our capabilities, we beat these lot." I just think it was, and as we touched on, it was a result that was coming. At Liverpool, they were. I think, in terms of his tactical approach there, rightly or wrongly, they chose to park the bus, and I think they left with the result that Mourinho wanted. But the performance, particularly in attacking sense, wasn't great. Benfica in midweek was a ragged performance. They scraped a victory there, and I just think it's just been on a steady. It's been on a steady decline. Probably for 10 days now,
but it could have been better. I mean, if you see what Tottenham did to Liverpool. If United had approached that game in a similar vein of form, would they not have come up with something similar?
Yeah, I mean, I think they had the attacking strength to hurt Liverpool that day. I think his selection was wrong. He played Mkhitaryan, who's been poor recently, left Mata on the bench, left Rashford on the bench at the start of the game. So, that result at Liverpool was down to his selection. as much as his tactics. But I think the reaction at Huddersfield is because they got Tottenham at the weekend, and he needs to get a response from his players. Because if they lose to Tottenham at the weekend, which there's every chance they might at Old Trafford, then United's title challenge, I think it was kind of unrealistic anyway, because the squad they've got for me, isn't balanced enough compared to City's. But I think the weekend showed Mourinho that he has got deficiencies there that need correcting, and without really giving his players a going over, he might not get the reaction he needs against Tottenham.
A couple of weeks ago, we saw Pep Guardiola talk about Tottenham being the Harry Kane team. Whether he meant it disparagingly or not, I think he set the record straight, saying obviously he was misinterpreted time. But what about the fact that Manchester United are pretty reliant on Paul Pogba to get the best out of all their players, firing on all cylinders? And without him, they really have struggled in the last month.
They have struggled without him, they have. And I think Pogba's a bit of an enigma at times, because you watch him in games thinking, you know, there's got to be more than this from the guy who's a £90 million player. But he does link it all together, and he gives them that.
And he was developing that understanding with Lukaku.
Yeah,
as well.
and he drives United forward. He's a player that will get the ball here and go there, and they haven't really got that in the team. So they have missed him. But, you know, you could make the same argument about Lukaku. If they lost Lukaku, then they'd be struggling as well. I just think United, his first 11, when it's fully fit, can beat anyone in the league. But beyond that, they have got weaknesses in the squad. He wanted an attacking left-sided player, didn't get it. And you can see now why he needed it, because they haven't got any width. So I think there are areas that he knows that need correcting. Whether he'll do it or not in January, I don't know.
No, I think United and Tottenham will be City's biggest challenges come the end of the season. And I think this week it's a cracking game to look forward to, isn't it? It's a brilliant game, and I think it will. It won't determine who will challenge City, but it will certainly be an opportunity for one of the teams to state their case and to make their point to City, and to say, you know, Pep, you aren't the only show in town. Yeah,
you make a good case for the game coming up. You should see 4 of the next 7. I mean, Mark, this is one for us to get our teeth into, really, especially for United to get back and find some form.
It's a tough run, because Tottenham tough, Chelsea away, tough with all the Mourinho connotations. Newcastle at home, well, Mourinho versus Benitez is always quite lively, isn't it? So that'll be a tough one. Then beyond that, you know, the derby's coming up. One of the key games for me are Chelsea and Arsenal, because United away from home against the Big Six have been abject under Mourinho. I think it's 1 goal in 6 games away from home. So that has to end at some point. Chelsea away, Arsenal away. You can't go to Arsenal and defend like they did at Liverpool. Chelsea maybe, but just need to start picking up points away from home against the big teams.
So how are they going to approach that game against Tottenham? Are we going to see something similar to what we've seen in the last couple of games?
I think it'll be like the Chelsea game last season, when at Old Trafford he put Herrera on Eden Hazard, and he basically just had a defensive.
It was a man marking job, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a brilliant performance that day, and I think he will look to shut down certain Tottenham players. Whether Eric Bailly and Phil Jones are fit, I'm not sure. That'd be key for Harry Kane, but I think Bailly's going to miss out. So it could be Smalling and Lindelof against Harry Kane.
Sammy,
it will be interesting to see how he does approach the game, because they're at Old Trafford, they're at home. Supporters will expect them. They won't expect a Liverpool-type performance there. They will expect United to go at them and then at least, you know, look for the win and look for the result. But I think he will revert to type, Jose, as he always does in the big games. I think he will go there to stop Tottenham. I think he'll be afraid of Tottenham and afraid of the players and the attacking players that they've got. And I think he'll hope that his side can nick a goal on the break, maybe perhaps, and come away with a victory that way. But I can't see him going up against Tottenham playing expansively, because I think Tottenham have just got too much to hurt them, and I think Jose knows that.
And Lindelof will be given a breather?
Well, may not be, because they haven't got the players, because Jones is struggling with injury, Eric Bailly's not fit yet, so he might have to play.
What's the word from Manchester?
Well, Bailly started training this week, but it might be a game too soon. And Phil Jones, they think it could be a hip problem, so again, he might be on the bench or might be missing, so that's a big problem, because Rojo's not quite fit yet, so it could be Smalling and Lindelof.
Yeah.
Grim.
He says the word grim. Do you know, I think I can't agree with you on that front, and we're going to have to leave it there. Sammy, Mark, thank you so much indeed for your company. And that's it from us for today. My thanks to these two. Don't forget, 11 Premier League teams will be aiming to get into the quarter-finals of the League Cup over the next couple of days. I'll be back next Tuesday when there may be 2 new managers to discuss. Bye for now.